This is it, the entire home media center. Every piece of home electronics is contained in here. For reference, the space taken up is exactly the same size as the TV, with optional soundbar below. It comes 2 centimeters further off the wall than the original wall mount, and actually sits 1.5 centimeters closer to the wall than the supplied TV feed. In other words, and that's the whole idea, it takes up essentially no extra space at home. All space used would otherwise go to waste, as it's behind the screen anyway. Sadly, in this case, I've had to run 2 cables here in the visible area, one for power, one for Ethernet. These could otherwise pass through behind the home media center and through a wall cable canal, which this wall doesn't have. In between the TV and the soundbar, there are small supports which contain doors to the I/O USB on the left, HDMI on the right. These ones are first prototypes and will get a revision later. It's actually done already. Anyway, point is not to let any unnecessary tech show as minimalist as possible. Anything in need of triggering or controlling can be handled either by a phone app or remote control. I'm thinking of a web front end for this and the rest of the more common appliances, but that's not today's topic. Down there is also the air intake on the whole width of the TV. On the top, there's the air outlet. As warm air rises, the setup greatly benefits the natural air movement. Since the gap in back is rather narrow, the idea is that air moves quicker through a smaller volume, which results in increased airflow. Quick access can be provided by slightly tilting the TV forward. It's really handy for a quick inspection or to turn the individual power outlets off or on. I was initially thinking of putting I/Os somewhere along this rim, but it proved unnecessary in practice. More I/O was never required. So, that's how it works. Sleek, simple, all-in-one home entertainment. It's really comfortable to use the mouse and keyboard from the couch. Let's have a look at the inner workings. To open the enclosure, we lightly grab the TV on top and bottom, tilt forward, and give it a slight push. There we go. Access is provided. The gap is now large enough for me to access pretty much everything. I can even fit in between and do things if I need to. Personally, I just prefer to grab a chair and sit underneath. The entire enclosure is held on the wall by screws. I've made provisions for 8 screws, although it needs a couple less. While the entire assembly is quite heavy, since it's hanging directly on the wall, there's no leverage, and thus the entire home media center sits quite solid. To pop the entire assembly on or off the wall, something that shouldn't come up much, 2 people are needed due to the sheer size. First, the TV comes off. That's fairly straightforward. Then, the wall mount screws have to be loosened slightly. Since the top ones are covered, and in future versions, probably the bottom ones too, we have to fold down the plates first to reach these. I'll show that in a minute. Since the home media center is meant to only come off the wall when moving, it's intended to remove these mounting plates, or at least the PC plate for transport. I've also made a simple carry case for that. After lowering the mounting plates and loosening the wall mount screws, the rails fold back up. The TV arm then comes down and the assembly can be lifted up and off the wall. Normally, I like to remove the PC mount plate and leave the auxiliary plate here in, due to the weight and value of the PC. The central TV arm features a pair, for redundancy and safety, of pneumatic springs. All weight is borne by the big central arm. The small guiding arms at the bottom are just there to keep the TV angle right. When up in the vertical position, the mounting plates are interlocking with the frame. Gravity slots them into the grooves at the bottom. To release, one may push the plates up by about 5 millimeters and pull forward gently. The plates are guided by rails on either side. Two-handed operation is however required at this time. Spring-loaded locks at the bottom prevent the plates from violent disassembly while transitioning between vertical and horizontal. Once the plates have reached the secure horizontal positions, the locks can be slid aside and the plate removed. I'm not going to do that right now. You just heard the click of when the locks go back in. Here, click. This is the one I have to make new. Putting back up is essentially the reverse process. Lift it a little bit. There we go. Make sure all the cables are aligned properly. There we go. And it slots in like so. Done. The left side was all laid out and pre-designed before manufacture. I've added the 2 optional fans at the bottom. Whether or not I need them is a little up for debate. To create as clean a setup as I could, I put as many cables as possible in the wall cavity behind the mounting plate. This gives a very clean, unobstructed look. Ignore the fan cables on the top, this is a work in progress right now. All major components are water cooled. Here you can see the idea I've mentioned earlier. The TV acts as part of the PC enclosure and helps channel the air. On the top, all the fans push-pull air through the generous radiator array. From there, I took care to keep as short a distance as possible for the hot air to escape. This pulls air over the internals, taking care of that required bit of airflow over capacitors and other parts not water-cooled. With the power supply, I also tried another concept, drawing fresh air from the back. Since the TV radiates as well, it's conceivable that the back of the TV holder, shielded from the TV and close to the wall, could be turned into a cold air intake for an air-cooled solution. Actually, the aluminium mounting plate could also directly be used for cooling. That would be awesome. It's not something I need, but it would be cool to get an order for one of these. Anyway, I'm getting pretty good temperatures overall, especially considering the TV heat source. With the help of my thermal camera, even after a couple of hours runtime and a saturated loop, all temps are in the mid-40s. Oh, and I'm running top-end hardware, seemed prudent considering the cost of the whole unit. Hottest place on the entire rig is the mainboard chipset. I should add a larger finned cooler, I'm gonna have to make one. At the bottom is the relay turning the PC on and off. Not much else to say. One of the HDMIs goes to the soundbar, the other one to the TV for full Dolby Atmos at 65-inch 4K. Ethernet's there as well and power. I was considering panels to hide even these cables, but On the right, I'm following a different approach. There's quite a bit going on here and more additions are being and shall be made in the future. This is sometimes easier if you can just hold the things in hand and try. So I'm considering this is the sandbox panel for the time being. On top, we got the electric outlet panel. To conserve compatibility, I'm using universal outlets at this time. There's also a small surge protector, and each outlet can be triggered individually. The only DIY cable here goes to external power. The tray is for excess cables and converters. The mounting panel is actually vented in the back, just in case. Here we have the network switch. I had a router here in the beginning, but I'm slowly upgrading to 2.5G Ethernet it had to go and was replaced. As I got a preference for wired anyway, I'll add Wi-Fi when I get around to it. Also, I may redesign the oversized network switch case. It's frankly a little bit ridiculous. Also critically, here we have a mini PC. Initially I've been considering running movies and music off of this one. At present it's mostly tasked with cloud sync and may become my smart home control center later on. Also, most importantly, it's home to a virtual machine NAS. These drives are the storage the media PC updates the cloud to. Since I had to change to beefier connectors, I'm going to have to get around to making larger mounting plates for the drives so I can put them in the right order again. Anyway, that's 2 main and 2 backup drives. So I'm kind of breaking my own concept here a little bit, as a properly redundant backup solution requires a secondary backup on another device, which I'm running in another room. So for the moment, there's a lot of free space here. Potential uses are for UPS, consoles, or other things. Personally, I don't really have a concrete plan at the moment and shall be adding features as I see fit. That concludes the tour of the Home Media Center. To quote someone on YouTube, I hope you found it interesting and informative. I shall be adding short clips of interesting upgrades when I get around to it in infrequent intervals. Cheers.